I want you to try to picture the scene. You're in the temple in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. And the temple, of course, wasn't a closed-in building with a roof like this is. It was made up of a number of courts or courtyards that led to the part called the Holy of Holies. And each courtyard led to the next one. The first courtyard was the courtyard of the Gentiles. And if you were not a Jew, you couldn't go beyond this one. The second was a courtyard of the women. And women couldn't go beyond this one unless they were going to offer a sacrifice. But this was also the courtyard where the people brought their offerings. And there were 13 receptacles that were shaped like trumpets, narrow at the top and wide at the bottom, that stood round the courtyard. And people brought their offerings, their gifts of money for the different things that they were required to do. Round the edges of the courtyard, there was a kind of sloping, tiered area where people could meet and stand or sit and watch what was going on. So you're there in this courtyard, and it's the Feast of Tabernacles, when the people remember the time when their ancestors lived in tents in the journey to the Holy Land. And in the middle of the floor in the courtyard stood 4 huge candlesticks. And at the beginning of the feast, after the sun has gone down, each of these 4 candlesticks were lit in what was called the illumination of the temple. And everyone who was there would have to shield their eyes because it was so bright that not only was the temple lit up, but the light shone over the whole city of Jerusalem. And you couldn't go anywhere then in the city without seeing the brightness. The light was amazing. So that's a scene, if you can kind of picture it this morning, standing probably on one of those tiers, and there in the midst of the crowd is Jesus, and he begins to speak. And we're going to read about that from our reading this morning, which comes from John's Gospel, chapter 8, and we're beginning to read at verse 12, and it's on page 1073 in the church Bibles. John 8:12. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." The Pharisees challenged him, "Here you are, appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid." Jesus answered, "Even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid, for I know where I came from and where I'm going. But you have no idea where I came from or where I'm going. You judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one, but if I do judge, my decisions are right, because I am not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. In your own law, it is written that the testimony of 2 men is valid. I am the one who testifies for myself. My other witness is the Father who sent me." Then they asked him, "Where is your Father?" "You do not know me or my Father," Jesus replied. "If you knew me, you would know my Father also." He spoke these words while teaching in the temple area near the place where the offerings were put. Yet no one seized him because his time had not yet come. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So in this place, from which this amazing brightness lights up the whole temple and, in fact, the whole city, Jesus proclaims, I am the light of the world. Not just a temple, not just a city, but the world. And as they listened, the people would be astonished. They would look at each other in amazement. And the religious leaders were bristling. They would be astounded, and a look of antagonism and disapproval would fill their faces. I am the light of the world. Who is this man? How dare he speak like that? And why was it so astonishing? And why did it cause so much offense to the religious leaders? Because to them, it would sound like a claim to be the Messiah and a claim to be doing the work that only God could do. To the Jewish people, the word light was associated with God himself. How do I know? Psalm 27, verse 1, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Isaiah 60, verse 19, the Lord will be your everlasting light. Micah 7, verse 8, though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light. I am the light of the world. Jesus, what are you saying? What are you claiming? And no wonder there are gasps from the crowd. No wonder the religious rulers react. Your testimony isn't valid. You can't make such a claim. Blasphemy. And Jesus stands firm. He defends his claim and he goes on to elaborate. He says, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but have the light of life. What do you make of that? I think this is one of the greatest of the I am claims of Jesus that we're looking at on these Sunday mornings. We live in a world and in a culture that in so many ways is characterized by darkness. Alan was speaking about this at our Wednesday communion service. The darkness of war, darkness of poverty, the darkness of injustice, the darkness of abuse, the darkness of cruelty, the darkness of despair, the darkness of doubt, the darkness of fear, the darkness of hopelessness, the darkness of bereavement, so much darkness. And Jesus comes to us. And as he did to those in the temple and says, Christ Church, I am the light of the world. Whatever darkness we may be experiencing this morning, Jesus comes and offers to bring his light. Isn't that tremendous? And for me, one of the great things about this is that Jesus talks about being the light of the world. In other words, he's your light, and he's my light. And his light is available to everyone. You're included this morning. His light shines for you. I want to just, for a few moments, to think about light and see how this great I am of Jesus filters into our lives. First of all, light brings comfort. When our oldest daughter, Jackie, was very young, she went through a time of finding it hard to get to sleep. Some of you parents this morning will know that experience with your children. I think she'd had a nightmare or two, and so she always wanted Pauline or me to go up with her and tell her a story. And when we had finished, she asked us to stay with her for a bit. And as we sat in her bed, she would gradually close her eyes. But then, just as we rose to leave the room, she would whisper, "Dad, please leave the landing light on. Leave the landing light on." You might think this is a bit strange because she was 21 at the time, but no, not true. She was just a toddler. But when the light was on and she could see the light, she wasn't afraid. The light brought her comfort, and as the light of the world, Jesus comes to us this morning and brings comfort and peace. And I know, I'm sure some of you here this morning are struggling with life. Maybe you've lost someone you love. Maybe you're struggling with health issues for yourself or someone close to you. Maybe you're just feeling that life is dark at the moment and the future seems dark. You go home this morning, close your door, and the loneliness might set in again. It just feels dark. But Jesus says to you, "I am the light of the world. Those who follow me will never walk in darkness." With Jesus, there's always light. And sometimes we need to just open our hearts and our minds and let the light in. Shine, Jesus, shine. I wonder if you need to do that this morning. Just say a prayer like this: "Lord Jesus, I need your comfort. Please be my light today, because you are the light of the world. Be my light of life today." So light brings comfort. Light also brings hope and relief. How do you like driving in Essex? Is there anywhere you don't like driving? I have to confess that there's one place where I don't like driving, and it's the Dartford Tunnel. I'm probably in a bad mood when I get there anyway, because I've been queuing for an hour to get into the thing. And I'm sure this happens to you as well. Whichever lane I get into is always the slowest. You know, I'm in a really slow lane and I see the one here that is going fast, the cars are going past me. So I get into it and then it stops and the one I was in goes, "You know what it's like, yeah?" And then I go into the tunnel and I'm right behind a huge juggernaut with an Uzbekistan number plate, trundling along. And right behind me, seemingly trying to get into my boot, is a souped-up Ford Fiesta, driven by a 17-year-old with a baseball cap turned backwards. Someone looks a bit like Caleb. Yeah. Listening to some dreadful, awful rap music with his windows down. And you can't change lanes in the thing, and it's dark. And I start wondering what it would happen if a bomb went off, or the ceiling caved in, or I ran out of petrol. But then suddenly, up ahead, there's light. The tunnel is ending, and the darkness has gone. I'm in the light now, and I can show that baseball cap who's boss. The relief is great. My fears have gone, the light has come back. Wonder if you're here in church this morning and you feel like you're in the Dartford Tunnel. You know, things have been tough, maybe with your job or with finance or your family issues, and it's just dark at the moment. And to you, Jesus comes this morning and says, "I am the light of the world. I can be your light at the end of your tunnel." He's with you in the darkness. He's leading you to the light. Listen, you can be in a place of pitch blackness, but it only takes one candle to be lit, and it's not pitch dark anymore. You can see the light. And I want to encourage you this morning, if you're in that dark place, to reach out to him. Invite him into your darkness. Let him be the light to you as you pray and read the scriptures and worship him, as you follow him, you don't need to be in the darkness because there is light, because he's the light of the world. And then light brings revelation. I know that you want to congratulate me on this later when I tell you that we have an arrangement at home that on 2 evenings a week, I cook the dinner. Thank you. And now, I know that probably you're making a mental note never to call on us unexpectedly on a Tuesday or a Friday when I do that. And here's the problem. I sometimes get away with cooking a ready meal. Asda do a better chicken tikka masala than Waitrose. Learn of that, Thorpe Bay people. The trouble is the cooking instructions on the packets is always in tiny printing. And I doubt if I could ever achieve my usual gourmet quality unless I read the instructions. So always I need to put the light on under the shelves that shine down on the kitchen surface so I can read them. It's revealed to me and my doubts are quelled. The light brings revelation. Do you ever have doubts about your faith? I don't know whether you agree with this, but I reckon that we all do from time to time. And hopefully they're fleeting, but sometimes doubt can set in. Spiritually, sometimes we can go through a period where we lose our zeal, our enthusiasm, our confidence. Maybe we've prayed for something, it hasn't happened. And we begin to doubt, is God there? Does God care? Maybe you've engaged in some sinful activity and you feel guilty. You wonder, has God really forgiven me? Maybe you've been disappointed, maybe with someone in church who's let you down or betrayed your trust, and you feel angry, even, dare I say it, with God. And you wonder, is it all worth it? And the effect of it all is like a shadow falling over your faith because you remember how it once was and it was better then. The darkness of doubt, and what you need is to remember Jesus is the light of the world, and it's time to come back and bask in this light and take a new step of faith and let the light of Jesus fill your heart and mind and sweep that darkness of doubt away. Jesus wants to reveal himself to you again this morning, to reveal his love and grace and forgiveness and bring you back into his light. The light reveals the truth. So put the doubts aside and take hold of the truth again, revealed by Jesus the light. Well, there's so much more I could say about Jesus as the light of the world this morning. In fact, as I was preparing for today, I really struggled to know what to include and what to leave out. And it may be this morning that nothing I've said really applies to you. Everything's good. Everything's fine. You're living in the glow of the light of Jesus, and that's great. Hopefully that's for most of us. But then I remembered something, and I realized this definitely does apply to every single one of us here this morning. So come with me for a moment to Matthew chapter 5 and verse 14. Again, Jesus is speaking. It's part of the Sermon on the Mount. And he's speaking to his followers, and he's speaking to us. And what does he say? He says, you are the light of the world. Isn't that amazing? Jesus is the light of the world. Of course, we can see that, we can believe that, we can rejoice in that. But Jesus doesn't keep that light to himself. He shares it with us. He pours it into us. He lets it shine not just on us, but through us. And he's saying, in effect, go on and shine that light in your world. By our lives, by our words, by our attitudes, by our holiness, by our example, we are to reflect the light of Christ in our community, our workplace, our family, our social contacts. He is the light of the world. But so are you. And so am I. So is that true of us this morning? Are we reflecting the light of Jesus? I want to just finish with a story, a little story I heard many years ago as the band came up to lead us in our final worship. Story of a little girl who was in hospital many years ago. In the time when the wards were long and there were just rows and rows and rows of beds. And the visiting hours were very strict, only a certain time each day. And so every day at this time, the doors would open and all the parents would rush in to be with their children. And on this day, the little girl was watching as the doors opened and all the parents rushed in, and she was looking for her mom and dad. But they didn't come. All the other parents had come in, but not her mom and dad. And as there was a buzz of excitement in the ward, the little girl just lay there looking at the door with tears in her eyes. And suddenly, the dad of one of the other children came up to her bed and just tried to reassure her, say, they'll be here. They'll be here any minute. Don't worry about it. They'll come. And sure enough, suddenly the doors burst open again. And the mom and dad rushed in, all flustered and apologetic because the traffic was so heavy. And they get to her bed and they sit down. But before they can say anything, the little girl looks down at the dad who had come to her bed. And she says to her mom and dad, Mom, Dad, was that man Jesus? Was that man Jesus? We are to be like Jesus as the light of the world. Amen.